שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב. יאללה לה, יאללה לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב. יאללה לה, יאללה לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. שבת אחים גם יחד. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Congregation Ormi, especially if it's your first or second time here, or just your first time here in a long while. So we're glad you're here tonight, and we're celebrating not only Shabbat, but also the tail end of Pride Month with a special Pride Shabbat service, hence the rainbows. And we begin our service together with the responsive reading. Whenever you see the italicized text, please join along. How good it is to gather virtually tonight for Pride Shabbat, in a beautiful rainbow of affections and genders, in the house of a God who loves each of us as we are created, without limit and forever.
How sweet it is to gather, women, men, and trans folk together, in the house of God who transcends humanness and categories.
How pleasant it is to gather virtually and in person together in a house of God who hears the prayers of all people everywhere.
We celebrate the uniqueness of our creation by the Holy Divine One, just as the Sabbath day celebrates the Sabbath day.
We pray on this Sabbath that all people will be able to escape oppression and taste the freedom of their own promised land. So we continue with Shir Chadash, and a number of the prayers we do regularly were actually written by LGBTQ composers, including this one, Julie Silver, and of course, Debbie Friedman has written a number of tunes that we do. So we're celebrating God's creation and the creations of many LGBTQ artists in our community. Shiru Adonai Kol Haaretz, Shiru Adonai Shir Chadash. Sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Rule Adonai Kol Haaretz, Shiru Adonai Shir Chadash. And we continue with the lighting of our Shabbat candles. I'd like to invite up Ron.
Loving God, we thank you for each small and large blessing in the week that has passed, and for the strength that you gave us to overcome our difficulties. We ask your blessings and protection for the week that lies ahead. Grant health and safety to our loved ones and friends. Help us to strengthen each other with gentle words and acts of kindness. Bestow your blessings upon all your children. May we enter Shabbat in purity, in peace, and in radiant joy. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kachanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu
At this point in our service, we think of the week that is past, and we hold on to all of the good things from this past week. So if you had an experience that inspired gratitude, if you have some good news to share, no matter how big or how small, I invite you to share that joy with the community now. Yeah, Ron?
I had a 5-ton, 75-foot-long limb over my property that I've been trying to get a neighbor whose tree the property was on to remove for 2.5 months. And he finally removed it 2 hours before the storm hit on Tuesday.
Well,
So I'm very grateful for that.
definitely. Eileen?
Our niece is safely in the U.S. 4 months from Guatemala, and we got to visit with her earlier this week.
That's great. We're glad your niece is back in the States. And Alyssa?
Finished my 4th year teaching with Richmond Public Schools, my 3rd year at this school, and I start teaching summer school next week.
Mazel tov on finishing the school year. Russ?
My grandson got a full-time job with benefits.
Mazel tov. That's great. Congratulations to your grandson on the new job. Yeah, Fran?
My daughter got a new job, which is exactly the job she wanted to have in medical research when she just got her degree.
Oh, mazel tov.
Medical research.
Wonderful news for your daughter. Laura?
That I have a secret friend. That's nice.
Good. It's always good to have friends. We thank God for all these blessings, for disasters that didn't happen, for family that made it home, for finishing the year, for new jobs, and for the blessing of simply being alive for this moment in time with the words of Shehechianu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh Amen. And I'd like to invite up Ed to lead us in a reflection on the Chadodi.
Come, my beloved, to welcome Shabbat. Come, my beloved, we say to Shabbat. We turn and welcome her in. Sometimes we compare her to a bride, sometimes to a queen. Every time we compare her to a woman, and ourselves to a group of male lovers waiting for her to arrive. We don't get enough stories about women who are loved by women, about men who are loved by men. We don't get enough stories about lovers who are neither men nor women. We don't get enough stories in which love does not fade, in which we see ourselves as the lovers and Jews we are. We had been given something in Ruth and Naomi, in David and Jonathan and in Joseph. Sometimes we hold and cherish, but that has also been clouded, questioned, and hidden. We honor that, we honor them, but we want more, we deserve more. Every Friday we bow, and in front of us is more. In front of us is love. Love, however, we feel it, love that fills our Shabbat and our tradition that honors the lovers.
Thank you, Ed. That comes from Mishkan Ga'ava, which is a special LGBTQ prayer book that the Reform Movement published a couple years ago. This piece was by Rachel Bell. So we continue with an abbreviated version of Lecha Dodi, Boi Kala. Boi Kala, 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 Lecha Dodi. kala, boi kala, boi kala, boi kala, boi kala. And I'd like to invite up Eddie to lead us in our next English reading.
Once someone accepted me with my somewhat long nose and skinny features. Someone accepted the way I speak, the way I act in public, and the way I really am. Because I was accepted, I can see more clearly who I am, and accept myself without reservation. I no longer want to be another. I am myself, simply and surely. Love has finally been defined for me, the person I really am and always was, and I am not troubled or ashamed by this definition. Please, God, never let me despair, because I am who I am.
Thank you. I'd like to invite up Stan to read us in the next English reading.
Pride is not automatic. It's not thrust upon us like responsibility on a new parent, nor handed to us on a silver platter. Rather, it's found bubbling in the depths of our soul. It grows like the first buds of spring, hindered by the weather, but strong nonetheless until it blooms into a full flower.
Thank you. So we continue with Am I Awake? Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? And we rise and prepare for the official call to worship, the Baruch Hu. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. And please be seated. We continue responsibly with Twilight People. As the sun sinks and the colors of the day turn, we offer a blessing for the twilight, for twilight is neither day nor night, but in between. We are many identities and loves, many genders and none. We are in between roles at the intersection of histories or between place and place. May the sacred in-between of this evening suspend our certainties, soften our judgments, and widen our vision. May this in-between light illuminate our way to the God who transcends all categories and definitions. May the in-between people who have come to pray be lifted up into this twilight. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. When two people relate to each other authentically and humanly, God is the electricity that surges between them. Please rise for the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please be seated. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha uv'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotofot b'neinecha uchtavtam hamezuzot beitecha uv'isharecha Leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tam kadoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim leot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem. I'd like to invite up Pat to lead us in the next English reading.
One of the most important teachings of the Torah is to love your neighbor as yourself. There are no ifs, ands, or buts. We are commanded to love all members of the human family. In the creation account of the book of Genesis, God creates us b'tzelem Elohim, in God's image. That means that all of us, no matter the color of our skin, religion, gender identity, nationality, economic status, disability, or sexual orientation, are reflections of the divine being who created us all. Therefore, when we act with love and compassion toward one another, we become holy. But holiness is not enough. Being holy means we become aware of our task to fix this broken world.
Thank you. Liberation. The time is nearing once again of our accounting of our own esteem, of gathering our pride in our accomplishments and in ourselves. A time of standing up and declaring who we are and proclaiming liberation for all to hear. It should be so simple to take pride in who we are and how God made us to be. But oh, those walls, traps, and barriers that are put in our way, and all the distractions meant to lead us astray. It has taken so very long, and yet not long at all, to rise and proclaim freedom for ourselves and many others as well, to make our land free for all who are different, to make it safe for our stories to tell. So now it is the time to liberate the land and ourselves as well, As we declare our love for those like us or across the lines of gender or sexuality, we do it with pride and love and faith, and in doing so, we liberate us all. Proclaim liberty throughout the land to all who live there. Ukratem dror ba'aretz lechol yoshveha. We continue with Micha Mocha. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai, Micha mocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osefele, Nora tehilot osefele. We continue with Vishamru. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת בי נפש, שבת בי נפש, שבת בי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. A blessing for my LGBTQ ancestors. You who fought to love, you who prayed to the same God I do, you who insisted upon your dignity even when the world said you had none, you who died of AIDS while fighting for a cure so that people like me might live, you who were shot in a massacre while on the dance floor, you who could not come out and held your secret until your dying day, you who were insulted, shamed, beaten, and brutalized, yet kept walking, you who contributed your fierceness, your originality, your art, and your voice to this world. I walk in your memory. I walk this path, smoothed and chartered by your sacrifice, toward justice, toward holiness, toward freedom. Please rise for our central prayer, the Amidah. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, v'Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לפני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע מכלכל חיים בחסד מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידו מלך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. Please be seated. We continue with a quiet moment for personal prayer or reflection. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom Ki ata לכל השלום, שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל, בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. At this point in our service, we think of loved ones who are in need of healing. Tonight, we think especially of Marty Cohen, Alyssa Freeman, Beth Levine, Rabbi Jerry Levy, Jan Rogers, and Jean Sanders. Are there other loved ones whose healing we wish to pray for tonight? With the power of community, we pray for their refuah shlema, their complete healing of body and or spirit, with the words of Misha Berach. Misha Berach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu, mekor habracha leavotenu, bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. So this week's Torah portion ends on a kind of strange note. At the end of Numbers, chapter 15, verse 32, talks about a man who is gathering sticks on Shabbat. And normally when you hear anyone described in the Torah, it's with an extensive pedigree, right? It's not just, Bob. It's Bob, son of Steve, son of, it goes back generations. So here we don't find out the man's name, and we don't hear about his family. Later on, the Talmud, there's a rabbi named Akiva who has a lot of great teachings, and he says, who was this mystery guy? Is it possible that he was Tzolofechad, the guy who had 5 daughters who later challenged the laws of inheritance so that women could inherit in the absence of a male heir? So that's the speculation we have, but if you look at this verse very literally, we don't know who this man's family was. And I was thinking a lot about the idea of family in terms of, as it relates to Pride Month. So family can mean different things to different people. And often in the LGBTQ community, you have your biological family, then you have your family of choice. Sometimes that's completely out of necessity, where your parents disown you, so you find new people to be your parents. Sometimes it's not that they disown you, but the disagreements are so strong that it makes it difficult to have a loving family relationship. And people across identities can sometimes relate to that experience. But in connection to this, I want to have a discussion tonight with 3 questions. The first question is, how would you define the word family, or how do you define your own family? So there's no right or wrong answers. Anyone who'd like to share? Yeah, Laura?
My biological family is dysfunctional.
So you can have family in the biological sense, and sometimes it's a supportive environment, and sometimes it just feels like a dysfunctional group of people, right, who would not have anything to do with each other if they weren't related by blood. Yeah, Joanne?
You can take it bigger than that. Genus, family, species. So we can go all the way to like the big Homo sapien group, or the whole species of life group is one family.
Mm-hmm.
Then to break it down further.
So some people have very narrow definitions of what constitutes a family, but you can look at that word very expansively from a scientific standpoint, right? That's not a category that goes beyond species even, right, at the umbrella. Any other ideas? Yeah.
People you derive support from.
So people you derive support from. So that's a very functional definition, right? It's true regardless of sharing DNA or legal adoption status, right? The support is what creates family. So then the second question is, have you ever felt that others were trying to define your family for you? As in who you can marry, whether you can have children or not, how you can parent your children, and so on. Yeah, Laura.
For basically 57 years, somebody has decided who I should love.
So you can get very strong messages from society or family members or other people in your life about this is how, if you want a family, this is how you have to create it. Yeah, Russ?
I used to have a mother-in-law.
Where is she buried?
Wait, I missed that. What did you say?
So he used to have a mother-in-law, nothing beyond that. But did she try to tell you how you should run your family? Mhm. Mhm. So this is an experience, right? Sometimes it's strangers trying to tell you what your family should look like and how it should operate, and sometimes it's people who you have more legal connections to, right? A mother-in-law might have a lot of opinions about what your family should look like, including how many grandchildren you should produce and such. Yeah, Fran?
Well, I'm just thinking from what he said is that I think I dodged a bullet. My mother-in-law passed away long before I married my husband, but his father, who was a love, used to tell me stories that I got to thinking, yeah, I dodged a bullet.
So sometimes,
She was, to put it mildly, controlling.
mhm. So sometimes people can control beyond the grave, right? You can still hear their voice in the back of the head of whatever view they think, should be guiding your life. I saw another hand over here. Yeah.
I mean, this isn't exactly what you're talking about, but I just, like, when you were talking about family, I feel really fortunate because even though I have divorced parents, and then my husband's parents were divorced, and most everybody got remarried, I ended up having, like 4 moms and so many grandparents that loved me and siblings and I think it's important that we, can see the value in all these relationships. And I'm obviously, as long as they're not like completely toxic, but for me, I feel like, I really benefited from having different mother roles and father roles and.
So sometimes people will say, okay, look, that's a divorce, right? That's breaking up of this one very narrow unit of how some people understand family, and they see that as failure. But for you, it was a source of blossoming, right? That instead of losing family, you gained family through that experience, and each person taught you something valuable about life and has become a cherished family member. Yeah, Eileen?
I got very, very lucky with my in-laws, and with Stan's parents, they adopted me. And it was just really, very special relationship versus my biological family in North Carolina, which I was thankful they were in North Carolina.
So we can have different experiences with in-laws in particular, right? Sometimes it's difficult to navigate those relationships because there might be a very opinionated person who oversteps some boundaries. And in other cases, it's a very warm welcome, right? You are one of us now. You're a part of our family. We've got your back. Again, getting back to that support. Stan, and then I think Ron.
Eileen has a large number of first cousins in North Carolina that she really doesn't have any contact with. And I've got a very small family, and she was asking me about some of the family that I'm relatively close to. And she said, what is your actual relationship? I said, oh, his grandmother was a cousin to my father's. And in my family, that's a close relationship.
So there's different ways of defining closeness, right? You can do it mapping out the family tree, who's your first cousin, but sometimes the first cousin might feel more distant than a third cousin, right?
But by the same token, my nieces and nephews have also adopted Stan.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You can have.
Not necessarily my siblings, but my nieces and nephews.
Mhm. And then there's the generations of family, right? Each generation can define it differently. So sometimes parents and children, their heart will be aligned and everything will go well. Other times they really mix like water and oil, and they can find connections with other generations in the family. Yeah, Ron, did you have your hand up?
I have a friend who is married to a man who has 6 brothers. And despite 30 years of marriage to this other man, his own biological families never accepted his spouse. But his spouse's 6 brothers call him number 7.
Oh.
And it's a great honor, and it's made all the difference in his life to be considered the 7th brother.
So that's beautiful. Then the last question is, think of a family that you've met, maybe interacted with substantially or just a tiny bit, And picture the family that's the most different from your own family. Is there anything valuable that you learned from their approach to family? Yeah, Ron?
What not to do.
So sometimes observing can be a lesson in what not to do rather than in how to approach something.
I think you can learn something good and bad from everybody you meet. It just happens to be what that day is or what that month is or who you're with.
I think that's a great insight, and there's something in Pirkei Avot to the same effect, right? Don't scorn any person. Everyone's got something valuable to share, basically.
You're right.
I think you can learn what to emulate, and you can also learn how not to conduct yourself, what you see others in your family.
So sometimes family members can be excellent role models, and sometimes, again, they're showing you how you don't want to conduct yourself in life. Yeah.
And I was just gonna say, like, what I've learned from seeing, friends' families or like from my own family is that, and that I, obviously try to do with my own children. Sometimes it's hard, but, is, you want to love them unconditionally. And so, like, and I think that's important for acceptance. And, I've seen the opposite of what can happen, like you've said about kids maybe being disowned from their families or kicked out or whatever, and I worked in homeless services for 4 years and with a youth shelter and stuff, so I've seen that, other spectrum of it. And so I just think it's, it's a good reminder to try to practice that, and with our judgments, I know, like, with my own kids and my son and my daughter, but just try not to be too judgmental about things.
So sometimes we can see a quality we have a little bit of in ourselves and other people, and seeing it to an extreme, right? Like, I think every parent has a vision of what they'd like their children to be, and then there's the process of discovering who the child actually is, right? And sometimes those match, and sometimes they clash a little bit. That's kind of an inherent part of the relationship. But seeing a family where they completely disown their child because they can't take those steps to understand, okay, you're different than the child I thought I would have, right? So seeing that can be an important reminder of, like, you know what? It's really not a big deal if my kid wants bright blue hair, right? Like, it's gonna be okay. Any other thoughts on family, or do you think you would understand this Torah character better if we had his usual pedigree, or do you think there's something we can gain from not knowing who someone's family is?
I think you're not prejudiced in any way, it's not someone you're supposed to understand.
So this character is sort of a blank slate, right? We don't know if he's from a very prestigious family that we might have certain expectations of. We don't know if he was from a very dysfunctional family, right? It's just, we know there's a person, and that's about all the information we have. And he's defined by his own actions. So any other thoughts that you didn't get a chance to share on the topic of family? So that's a big topic that we could discuss for many, many hours, but we won't. So I just hope that Oremy feels like a family for you as well, especially in the sense of being a place where you receive support at all times, and you feel like, especially if you've come from anywhere else, that you've been fully adopted and a part of the tribe, so to speak. Okay. So I'd like to invite up Lori to share some brief announcements on behalf of the board.
Shabbat Shalom. Tomorrow there will be Torah study, both in person and virtual. Next Friday, our very own Stan Foyer will be leading services, correct? Is that next Friday, Stan? Because Rabbi Ahuva will be gone for 2 weeks leading the honeymoon Israel trip. So it's a very exciting time for her and a good experience for those involved. So Stan has generously agreed to lead services next Friday, and the following Friday it will be David Goldsmith. Okay. And because of the holiday, Independence Day coming up, there's no Ormy Book Club, and nothing else really to announce other than regular things that go on every week. Does anybody have anything else to share? No? Okay. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Lori. We continue our service with Aleinu. Please rise for the Aleinu prayer. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gdula leotze breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kishmachot hadama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו 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 אחד. At this point in our service, we think of loved ones who have passed away recently or at this time in years past. Tonight we remember with love the recent passing of Cindy Atlas Blacker, sister of Judith Atlas, the Yartsites of Samuel Amos, father of Beth Levine, George Foote, grandfather of Sarah Foote, Nathan Gross, grandfather of Alex Simon, Sidney Kerman, father of Linda Kerman, and Dr. Lyubov Rivkin, mother of Zina Tulchinsky. Are there other loved ones we wish to remember tonight? Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing. We rise or remain standing as a community of support for the mourners Kaddish. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudesha brichu le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort for all who are bereaved, and let us say amen. Please be seated. We'll conclude our service tonight with Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday day I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I? Shabbat Shalom. And thank you to Patricia for playing tonight. Speaking of rainbows, we're not completely over them yet. I tried to make a rainbow challah. It came out a little special, but you're welcome to join us out back for Kiddush and Motzi.
the closet. All right. If you see, I think somebody else has to set it up. I think there have to be, I think there have to be green lights on. You don't have to touch anything, I don't think. But you better ask her, because I thought there were green lights on both of them. You also have to check the microphones to be sure the microphones have a green light on them. And the batteries